So, Eric, I might need your help with a little thing.
What's up? You need help with something? Monster Hunter? Art? Destiny 2?
No. No, actually. Not this time. Gonna need your help with some souls.
You said souls?
Oh, yes.
No. I've done Dark Souls 2 and 3 and Bloodborne. I can't do it again.
No, trust me, you need to be here for this one. I've already put up with Dark Souls 2 and 3 and Bloodborne and got those out of the way, but not this one. I'm gonna need you here on this one. With you and your experience.
So which one is it?
It's Demon Souls.
Demon Souls? I'm not going back to the PlayStation 3 just to play that. Plus, if you haven't noticed, the game really hasn't aged well. And I've never played that game, so what use am I to you?
Who said anything about going to a PlayStation 3? Alright, so, back in, I believe, 2009, we got a little game called Demon Souls released that this was the beginning, this was the birth of a franchise that is both famous and notorious for so many reasons, but one that is well received nonetheless, and has sparked an incredible legacy through the years. And now, here in 2020, the dawn of the new generation, PlayStation 5, has arrived. And yet again, Demon Souls makes its return. And what do you know, that this is the one game technically out right now that is only next-gen exclusive. This is the only title that you cannot get on PS4 still. And I mean, what is there to say about it? I don't think either of us really played much Demon Souls. I remember specifically a couple years ago, I did pop it in on my PS3 and played a few hours of it. Took down a couple bosses, and I could see what was so special about it at the time. How it spawned this series. But for a lot of people, they never really got the chance to play it or bothered to go back to it. And now here we are with a surprising remake of the game. One that's going to show off the power of the PlayStation 5 and all its features, such as maybe graphics, gameplay, sound, haptic feedback, who knows? I mean, there's no telling what we're going to run into with this, but I hope that it lives up to its famous reputation. And who better to do this than our local Souls player? You're ready for this, right?
No, not at all. Not even the slightest.
Please don't break my PS5.
No promises. The controller would come first anyways.
Shit. here goes nothing. This is our Demon Souls review. I'm Dutch, and this is my friend Eric.
How's it going?
And together, we're going to tackle our journey into this dark descent. Demon Souls. What sparked the journey across multiple generations now, and has become infamously known as a very, very difficult series and a trademark for that difficulty it has. And now, it returns once again back to its very beginning with Demon Souls. And here we have it on PlayStation 5. And what's the verdict on our first dive into the next generation of gaming with Demon Souls? Well, how about we begin with the fact that even though it's a straight-up remake, to where all the mechanics are exactly the same of it, it still feels like it is a new title worthy of being on the new generation. And the first time you enter that realm and stare at all your surroundings, you could feel that sort of sense of dread better than ever of a doomed world, so to speak, and your fight for survival in it. Now, where we mentioned that gameplay is basically the same, how exactly did you feel about, going back to something seemingly so basic?
So, as Bluepoint took over the Demon Souls project, they obviously went through and updated the graphics and the HUD and just made the game overall more pleasing to the eyes. But they kept in the relative combat of the original game and the feel, just so old fans of Demon Souls can still feel that same feeling they had when they went through it the first time, while enjoying the new updated versions of each character model going through the game. It's a really good looking game. I think they did a great job. The combat still the same. They still kept some of the clunky old glitches that were in the game. Nothing game breaking, but things that made the game fun just to mess around with.
Yeah, the combat doesn't feel like it has some of those extra moves and abilities like the later entries in the franchise did, but this is technically different from those. It's its own separate world and timeline, and I believe its identity does stand out from the rest of the series. Thankfully, you won't run into problems like, say, with the original version of how I remember in the original game, if I ran into a cluster of barrels and rolled through it, the game would suddenly chug so badly on the frames per second. Whereas here, with this beautiful coat of paint and excellent performance on it, you don't have to worry about any problems like that. So, in the midst of combat, never fear a single drop of frames, really, or even during your exploration. Its performance stays pretty much top tier the whole time, whether you're going with performance mode or resolution mode, so to speak. On the topic of graphics, this really is the main contender of showing off what the next gen looks like. In every one of these unique worlds that we enter, we're looking at fallen kingdoms, we're looking at deep, massive abysses and caverns, and then you're seeing things such as the massive cathedral, for example, where as far as you can see in the distance, you see towers that are so haunting, piercing high into the heavens, and stormy skies and chains wrapping around so many towers. The overall art style in general is just amazing for this game, I would say.
Definitely. They definitely highlighted the beauty of the game itself. Doing a side-by-side look at the game, even when you drop in to the tutorial right away, they're already showing off just the pure capability of the PlayStation 5 and what you're expecting to see as you progress through the game. They're not afraid to take risks, it looks like. Going back to the tutorial, they like showing off your white rays, their shadowing, everything. It's just, you're obviously awe-inspiring as soon as you drop into the game itself. You almost lose yourself in checking out the foliage and just the sound differences that come with the game itself and how they affect the haptic feedback for the controller.
Which is in itself, I think, pretty well utilized. They did what reasonably fits in with what goes on in the game, I think.
Yeah.
They utilized it where they could. And even in some boss fights, for example, when you go into these battles against a massive enemy that is harrowing and will strike fear into you, it's also taking advantage of the controller with like the roars and the stomping that they make in their entrances.
Definitely. For the sounds, if you've ever played a Souls game before, or Bloodborne, you know that the game itself has always had a wonderful soundtrack. It always makes you feel immersed when you're playing it. It does do great on that. As for the haptic feedback part of the sounds, like one thing you really notice if you're paying attention is crossbow bolts or arrows that fly past you. You will feel that specific slight vibration on either side, the left or right of the controller, depending on which side the arrow flies past you. So I think they do a really, really good job of showing off this console's power.
Yeah, and you need to bear in mind that this is the first game of the new generation. When you compare a title at launch to a title towards the end of a console's life cycle, when they really nail things down and utilize the most of its capabilities and powers, thinking that this is the first step into the next gen and what it can become is going to truly be impressive, especially with just how amazing of a job that they did in all respects so far. So if you're wondering about any of those elements from the gameplay, graphics, sound, all spot on, what you would expect, if not more, from a Souls game. Moving on, I think it's kind of important to point out some of the flaws.
Yeah, each of our dislikes to see just to see what we didn't like and did like as far as it comes to the game. For me, I really honestly don't have too many dislikes with the game, really. I come from a Souls background, so for me, I don't have a lot. But as a recommendation for you, if this is going to be your first Souls game you pick up, is don't give up. Everybody, from the most part, when they first pick up Souls game, is going to be extremely frustrated. Motherfucker!
Easy there. Easy.
Stop! You did this to me! I shall take myself and
Don't be afraid to do your research, because it'll definitely help you out.
Absolutely, and one thing to bear in mind is the difficulty on these games. It's definitely part of its notoriety, and in this case, where do you feel like that difficulty falls among the rest of the series?
I think, as far as games go, I think Dark Souls 3 probably had the most difficult bosses, as far as the actual mechanics of the boss. I think Dark Souls 2 would probably be the most difficult, just due to the fact that its combat is clunky, and it's really hard to use the maneuverability that most Souls games, they're known for. And I haven't played Dark Souls 1, so I can't really put that up there, but I'm assuming it's probably right below Dark Souls 2 as far as difficulty. But this, I would probably put it up there with Dark Souls 1 with difficulty. It would be where I would probably put it at. It's not quite Dark Souls 2, but I would definitely say the basic enemies are harder than the bosses in the game.
Yeah, I gotta agree on the point that some bosses the difficulty seems to randomly jump around from some of them. You take the final boss of one area, where you're basically fighting like a giant manta ray, and chopping them all down with a powerful sword that's cleaving slices of wind through everything in its path. And then you compare it to another area with, say, a fire demon who just moves with intense speed and constantly slamming his fist down, creating splash damage. That boss is more frustrating to fight than, something like that Manta Ray boss, for example, or dealing with another boss where, take for example, I suppose the Cathedral boss, where we're just trying to figure out which one of the maidens is the real one out of her clones.
Yeah, definitely. The bosses in this game are not like any other Soul series. This one definitely seems like they're mechanic based. There was a lot of hitting a certain part of the boss to make them fall to do damage, and that was really it. This isn't like the 2 and 3 where it's like, I hope you're good at dodging because these bosses are just going to unload on you the entire time you're fighting them.
Essentially, yeah. And just from my opinion, in terms of difficulty, I kind of thought I went through 2, maybe the easiest, at least compared to my experience with 3 and Bloodborne. I've only got a handful of hours experience into Dark Souls 1 and Sekiro, but for me personally, I think it does fall somewhere between 2 and 3. And I feel like part of the difficulty was just, unfortunately, some of the frustrations of dealing with level design, for example, or the spaces that you're confined to, rather than actual, this is difficult because of the way this boss is moving around and going against me. And yeah, sometimes the general enemies are actually more frustrating to put up with than the actual boss. The journey of reaching the boss is the most difficult part in some levels, for example. So bear that in mind. But with all things considered, I think it is certainly worth putting up with the fight. What you need to understand about a Souls game, if you haven't played it before, is stay determined and keep going at it, because you aren't going to get everything on your first try. You can't just breeze through every game that you play. When it comes to a game like Demon Souls, there's going to be some repetition and learning patterns, learning the movements, and perfecting your own attacks and patterns. That's what some of this is going to boil down to. So in a game like this, just keep at it and perfect your runs. For those of you who have played Demon Souls already, it's probably not going to be anything new, so give it your best. The only thing that really has changed for you veterans is just it looks more gorgeous than ever and sounds better than ever. That's essentially your biggest change.
Yeah, just one thing though, if you are coming from the original Dark Souls game and you've never played Demon Souls before, just know, just a fair heads up, that hyper armor is not a thing in this game. It's not. So strength builds are no longer going to be superior, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and he would certainly know more about this. He knows how to perfect his builds and get things set up right, whereas I just kind of go with it based on, I like this certain movements with this weapon, and I want to at least stay armored, but I want to stay relatively light as I can, so I'm not fat rolling all over the place. I just kind of try to find whatever fits into a general niche than centering around one focus. So,
well, we want to talk about our favorite parts?
Yes. I think to me, what I like the most about Demon Souls in general is the build up to everything. The actual adventure through these dark, grim worlds, where pretty much everything feels hopeless in Demon Souls. Everything looks like all is lost, but you're still going. It does an excellent job of just this constant build up through these environments you roam through, and then leading up to seeing that boss come storming in on you, and every single one of the ends of the levels, essentially. Or when you reach the next bonfire, you always know that something truly scary is about to be in your path. And I think this game, just like much of the rest of the series, is an excellent job at that. Especially with some of these unique boss fights, like, again, the giant manta ray in the sky, the King of the Storms, essentially, or how you faced I believe the Dragon King.
Dragon God.
Even though it was a relatively simple battle, it was still one that got you excited. And especially in your case, what are your favorite parts as a...
So, Souls has always been known for, you go through the tough world, you're fighting the standard enemies, and you get to where the boss is, and they always do a great job of presenting the boss room as like this big, ominous room, and it really just highlights kind of what the boss is going to be about. But Bluepoint goes further with the new sound designs, is that when you're going through certain worlds, you can hear the creaking and the noises of the actual boss itself before you get to the room. If you pay attention in the tutorial a lot too, it shows us off, is that at certain parts you can hear the groaning of the tutorial boss. You can hear his roars, his growls, the gurgling from him. They add a little more build-up, and it also, I think they did a great job on that. As far as the actual weapons in the game go, don't expect a great variety of weapons like Dark Souls 3. I mean, there's enough, but there's not enough at the same time. I think one thing they did do great, better than FromSoft has ever done, with magic. So magic for me has always been, it's supposed to look impressive, right? It's magic, it's got this big glow effect. It makes you feel like it's going to do a lot of damage. But the previous Souls games have never really nailed that for me. But for Demon Souls, the Bluepoint remake, they really put a lot of work into the particle effects and how magic looks. And it makes me feel like when you cast something, it actually feels like, oh shit, I'm in danger. I need to get out of here, or I need to avoid this as much as possible. It just looks great. They did a great job of that. So if you're a caster, whenever you play a Souls game, the casting in this game definitely feels good. It looks good. It sounds good.
I'd have to completely agree with that. Especially just watching it. Seeing like the raw power that they put into the animations and everything makes it look like it's so exciting to kind of unleash all that. So for whatever build you're going for, really, you'll find something for everyone. And just learn the strengths of every build and sort of class and build upon that. Work towards it. Don't stretch yourself too thin, and I think you'll really find yourself in a good experience if you do that just right. And I think one of the other key parts of the game that we have to mention is invasions, and how that's more or less multiplayer. For me, I've never been a fan of dealing with that. Does with that. Okay. Wait. Invader? What was that? Oh no, I'm not ready for an invader. Where the hell could they? Whoa, whoa! You're in the wrong game. These aren't the same kind of demons. Look. I'm not a threat to you. I just want to go kill the bot. Oh no. Oh. Never been a fan of dealing with that, but it's kind of unavoidable in some cases. You have to know what you're doing and kind of wrap your head around everything to understand that these invasions, these PvP moments, sooner or later you're accidentally going to have one. Yeah. And for you, who's definitely got more skill on dealing with people coming at you, what do you feel like with the situation of invasions in this game? And what would you say to also new players who are stepping into this?
Yeah, so definitely going into this game, positive Bluepoint definitely heard the voices of previous and current Souls players. One of the biggest problems of the previous Souls games was that Invasions, which is like the multiplayer, never really had dedicated servers, so you'd be connecting with somebody across the country or on the other side of the planet, and just the connection was terrible. They're lagging all over the place. You're getting hit and he's not even near you. It wasn't great at all. But Bluepoint added in servers, so you got servers now that are dedicated for connecting to invasions and multiplayer, so you see a lot less of that lag. Their latency is nowhere near as bad as it is in the previous Souls game. So it's still fun. It's a lot more, it's a lot more ironed out than the other Souls games, but it's not as alluring as the previous Souls game. So I'd say Dark Souls 3 is probably the peak of the best multiplayer as far as variety and combat capabilities, but I would say Bluepoint's Demon Souls has the better quality multiplayer as far as connection.
That seems to be really accurate, especially from my experience as well. And for those of you who aren't in the know, you also have to understand that, yes, you can be invaded, but on the flip side, you can call for help. And sometimes, if you're struggling through with a boss that bad, take up that call for help, and you can get, I believe, up to 2, maybe even 3 allies to have your back and take on these bosses. And there's no shame to doing that. Just understand the pros and cons of it at the same time.
Yeah. Just understand that when you're playing through the PvE part of the game, when you're summoning in people to help you, the likelihood you're going to get somebody on the PvE side with as high a skill level as somebody on the PvP side is very different. Because I know a lot of invasion players that can take out 4 PvE players without a sweat. So just know that it's not always going to work in your favor. There is an offline version if you just want to avoid that altogether. Each Souls game has that. But I do recommend trying online because it is fun to play.
Yeah, it brings a very different experience and some surprise around every corner. You never know what's going to be affected in your run and how it might impact your journey to the boss. It can definitely be very upsetting at times, but on the flip side, it can also be incredibly exciting. So, bear that in mind. Well, we did it. Demon Souls has been conquered, and it was a hell of an experience. Our first real step into the next gen of gaming. It's a wild ride, and to me, I think I could see why it left its mark on gaming back when it did. And now it's back looking better than ever, with a beautiful show of just what truly is going to be coming and the power of next gen. For the both of us, this is more or less our first real full experience of Demon Souls. And it definitely took a while. I don't know if we were ever going to go back to it on PlayStation 3, but instead we were greeted with this. So what are your thoughts on this being the next gen title, the launch title of PlayStation 5?
I think Bluepoint really hit it home, honestly. The game was already a success when FromSoft first made it, and it was great then. And now Bluepoint updated the graphics. They kept in a lot of the quirky, funny glitches in the game, just to give a little nostalgia to those who really played the hell out of Demon Souls back in the day. So I think honestly they nailed it. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It's one of those games that's still fun to play, but it won't get a 10 for me because it really doesn't appeal to a wide variety of people. If you aren't a previous Souls player or know anything about the hack and slash type game, I wouldn't delve into this as your first Souls game. But overall, it was great. It was beautiful.
And I think it's fairly accurate to say all that. I mean, for pros on this game, it's absolutely gorgeous. Drop dead gorgeous on all these visuals and settings and locations. Your enemies, every encounter feels like a daunting task that you're being thrown up against. Sound design, awesome. Music definitely sets the mood of these creepy, dark worlds. And, I don't think there's really that many other negatives I could say. I guess I'm a little more casual into the Souls series. I think it's an excellent game, and I'm proud to see that it's honoring its heritage and history so well. But on the other hand, for those of you going into this, you gotta understand it's still a Souls game nonetheless. Where would you rank it in difficulty?
As far as difficulty among the Souls games, I can't really put too much info as far as Dark Souls 1 because it's a game I still have yet to play. But when it comes to 2, 3, Bloodborne, and this, I would have to say it's relatively difficult, but not for the reasons it should be difficult. It's difficult because it still uses old structural layout for combat. So it's not exactly easy to move around in as if it were Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne, where you have the maneuverability to avoid enemies. So I would have to put it right around the same level as 2 as far as difficulty, but not for the enemy bases, but just for the clunkiness of the combat.
There's no denying that some of our environments that we fight in, part of the struggle just comes from how claustrophobic, how tight the spaces are. I mean, when your sword is just banging on a wall when there's barely enough space to even swing it in the first place, that's frustrating, but not for the right reason. And on top of that, I mean, if you're going into this expecting a deep, rich story, something is there, but you really have to dig for it, it feels like. You really gotta dabble into it, look between the lines, try and connect dots. It's not going to be laid out before you. So if you're expecting that, then no, you're just going to kind of more or less be running through a lot of this with not too much of an idea of what's going on. And apart from that, yeah. Would you say that the difficulty actually just kind of sometimes spike with some of those bosses?
Honestly, I didn't think the bosses in the game were actually difficult. I found that the basic enemies and the levels were more challenging than the actual bosses of the levels.
So that's a fair point in itself. And apart from that, I think that mostly concludes my cons to this game. The only other negative I might mention is it's still Demon Souls in the end. It's still the controls and movements, everything. So if you're a relatively new Souls player and are you expecting to run around and jump or some of these other functionalities, you ain't going to be having that. So just bear that in mind. But ultimately, he gave it a 9 out of 10, and I'm pretty inclined to agree with that. So would you say that this is a must-play?
For sure, definitely. If you like hack and slash games and you never really wanted to dip your toes into the Souls series, this is not a bad game to start off with. It's not too terribly difficult, and I think it'd be not too hard to pick up. So that's probably my recommendation, because this probably should be your first Souls game to play if you're going to do.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You could try this game. If you love it, grab the Dark Souls remaster, and then you can go through the rest of the trilogy if you want, and hit up on Demon Soul or Bloodborne and Sekiro even. So, with that and everything considered, this is basically 2020 wrapped up in a nutshell. And you should expect another big review coming. I know I've been hyping Cyberpunk up a lot, so anticipate that. And maybe a reflection on the highlights of 2020. Best games, and maybe the worst moments. So, with that, I think that concludes our first dive into the next generation. I think we got a lot more to look forward to. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching. Let's head on out. Take care, everyone. Well, it made it through. And we have made the Dark Souls experience. Fuck!